It's been a really busy week for global anti-Semitism, especially in Europe. There's been a spate of incidents across various European countries, notably Greece, Belgium, and most recently Austria. In Austria, there were 3 incidents in a space of about 1 week, including an Israeli couple being refused a parking space at a campsite in Austria where they were set to visit to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. And when they went to give in their Israeli passports, the person at reception said, nope, refused to serve you. Similar thing happened in a restaurant in Vienna. It was a pizzeria. There were 3 classical musicians visiting Vienna to play in a concert. I went to order some food at an Italian restaurant, and the waiter asked them, what language were you speaking? And they said, Hebrew. And he said, oh, well, I'm not going to let you order. I'm not going to serve you. So that was quite shocking. And I think one of the things that stood out from that particular incident at the restaurant was that one of the musicians said that lots of other people eating had paused, watched the incident happen, and then just kept going. And he said he felt the silence very strongly. So I think that has been a theme in a lot of the anti-Semitic incidents that have been happening over the last week. In Greece, there have been many different anti-Semitic incidents, especially in the last month. 2 kosher restaurants in Athens, the Chabad restaurant and also King David Burger, I spoke to them earlier this month, experienced vandalism, threats, insults. And then there was another incident in Syros, which I think a lot of people will have seen the footage of. A boat of Israelis were unable to disembark because pro-Palestine protests blocked them from getting off the boat. And a separate incident in Rhodes, some Israeli teenagers said that they were chased, attacked by a man wielding a knife. Now, the reports on that one have been a little bit contentious, with the kind of Greek police saying that there was no knife involved and there were fewer attackers than the victims claim there were. But nevertheless, the incident, appears to have happened. And then, of course, there was Belgium. So Belgium is where Tomorrowland, it's a famous music festival, was hosted in a town called Boom. Essentially, there are a lot of Israelis there. There are thousands of Israelis that go to pretty much all the world's music festivals. But thousands of Israelis went to Tomorrowland, and there were Israeli DJs set to perform. One of them had his show cancelled, actually. However, in the audience were many Israelis waving Israeli flags and a couple of people waving the flags of the IDF brigade, Givati. Now, an organization that many people will have heard of, unfortunately, the Hein Rajab Foundation. It's a quasi-legal advocacy organization that aims to lobby through arrests, interrogation, extradition of Israeli soldiers who they accuse of war crimes in other countries. So, for example, there have been incidents of Israelis going to visit, let's say, Italy, and Hein Rajab will then try and ask the Italian law enforcement to arrest them and prosecute them under the Genocide Convention or the Geneva Convention. So this happened at Tomorrowland. The 2 Givati soldiers, or at least the 2 soldiers waving the flags, were arrested and detained and interrogated by Belgian law enforcement, Belgian authorities, and subsequently released. They then apparently traveled to the Netherlands, where Hein Rajab filed a second petition, a legal complaint, for them to be arrested there and prosecuted. As yet, there's not been much of an update on that. So there has been a lot of kind of fear of Israelis traveling abroad because of all of these different incidents, of whether they can be loud about their identity, whether they have to, not speak Hebrew in public, whether they have to be frightened of saying where they're from when asked. how to produce, their passports, their ID, and not feel frightened that there's going to be some sort of backlash. And also, it's just kind of been a warning for some people about being visibly Israeli in certain circumstances. Now, a lot of politicians in these various countries, whether it was in Greece, whether it was in Austria, the Netherlands, have come out and said, we protect our Jewish community, we don't condone discrimination of any form. However, it does appear that there is a continuing escalation, worsening of anti-Israel and anti-Jewish sentiment throughout the world, not just Europe, but every continent. What we have seen is the increasing nature of anti-Semitism being hidden under the guise of kind of political rhetoric, when actually it's Jews that are being targeted. For example, I interviewed one of two Jewish comedians whose show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Edinburgh Festival Fringe, they're both used. It's the largest performance arts, entertainment, comedy festival in the world, and thousands of people come every year. Capital of Scotland. I've been, and every year there are myriad Jewish artists and Jewish comedians and Jewish performers. And this year, two Jewish comedians who have both performed at the festival and at this particular venue on multiple occasions had their shows cancelled, like literally a week and a bit before they were set to perform. And of course, have incurred all the costs of merchandising and buying brochures and flyers and marketing and travel and accommodation, and obviously also the emotional attachment to performing their shows had them cancelled because the venue said it didn't feel safe having these two Jewish artists, and the potential for risk, and so it goes to show like the fact that and they were cited the reason that it could attract a lot of threat from pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel activists. Now, these are both British Jewish comedians who choose not to speak about politics, and yet that is still an incentive for cancellation of their shows. And as I spoke to Rachel Krieger, one of the comedians, and she had spoken to the CEO of the festival, who told the venue this is going to be viewed as anti-Semitism, but it went ahead. And this is their livelihood. It's, as she said to me, it's like not being able to go to the office because that's their job. And so if these things are happening to Jewish artists or Jewish comedians or Jewish professionals under the guise of anti-Israel alone or criticism of Israel alone, it means that a lot of things are being permitted. And therefore we're seeing this big escalation of anti-Semitic actions that are somewhat condoned because they are swept under the carpet of legitimate protest.